On a quiet afternoon, as the sun painted the sky with soft shades of orange and pink, a playful dog found a newborn baby abandoned among the trash, shivering from the cold. Driven by his protective instinct, the dog carefully picked up the little creature and took him home, never imagining the impact that this encounter would have on his owners' lives. Noah, a 14-year-old teenager, was walking with his faithful companion, Zeus, as they did almost every day. The two were inseparable, and for Noah, these moments with Zeus were an escape from the worries that weighed on him. At home, the atmosphere was filled with sadness, mainly because of his mother's condition, who was not doing well at all. The boy felt the need to go out and breathe some fresh air, and it seemed that Zeus felt the same. "You needed to go out too, didn't you, buddy?" "It's been tough today," Noah murmured, stroking Zeus's head, who responded with a bark, as if he truly understood his owner's words. As they walked through the busy square, where people were running, taking walks and cooling off with ice cream, Noah couldn't shake the dark thoughts that were following him. His mind was full of worries, especially about his mother's condition. The pain of grief he felt was suffocating, and each step seemed harder than the last, as if he were carrying the weight of the world on his young shoulders. In the midst of this whirlwind of feelings, Zeus began to get agitated unexpectedly. The dog, always so obedient, was now pulling on the leash with unusual urgency. Noah, surprised by the sudden change in the animal's behavior, tried to calm him down. "Calm down, Zeus, calm down. I'm going to release the leash now," he said, but before he could finish unclasping it, Zeus let go and ran down the street, free and determined. Noah, still trying to understand what was happening, ran after his friend, unaware that that day would mark the beginning of a new and unexpected story in their lives. Zeus barked at the boy, but he was already far away, running with a determination that Noah recognized. When Zeus ran like that, he knew the dog would take a while to return, something that had happened before. It was common for Zeus to go out to play, explore, and only return home later, always finding his way back. Trying not to worry, Noah sighed and turned around, starting the walk back home. However, his mind remained heavy, drowning in the worries that had accompanied him since his mother had fallen ill. Each step he took was like carrying an invisible burden, the weight of sadness squeezing his young heart. "Everything could have been so different if we had more money for treatment," he thought, reflecting bitterly on the difficulties his family faced. As the square was left behind, Noah lost herself in memories of the happy times with her mother before the tragedy struck them. The sun continued to set on the horizon, spreading a soft, golden light over the city. The shadows of the trees grew longer, and the cool afternoon breeze caressed his face, bringing a modicum of relief to his anguished heart. "Who knows? Maybe one day things will get better and Mommy will smile again," he whispered to himself, clinging to a thread of hope that, despite being fragile, still held. As he walked, Noah couldn't help but look back, hoping to see Zeus returning at some point along the way. That wait was more than just for his four-legged friend to return. It was a reflection of the strength of the bond they shared. Zeus always came back, and somehow, that certainty gave Noah the feeling that, even in the most difficult circumstances, there was still something he could trust. The dog, more than just a pet, was a true companion to Noah, always present in both happy and difficult times. Zeus was not just a dog, he was a loyal friend who knew Noah's emotions better than anyone. "Come back soon, buddy," the boy murmured, feeling the absence of the faithful dog by his side. Although reluctant, Noah decided to go home, although the thought of finding his mother crying discouraged him. The atmosphere at home was somber, marked by the palpable sadness that weighed on everyone. Her stepfather, unable to comfort his wife, was as shaken as she was, and this atmosphere of pain made Noah's heart tighten even more. While Noah walked, Zeus, now free from his leash, ran around the square, enjoying every second of his newly won freedom. The sky was beginning to darken, tinged with shades of twilight, and the dog, at 6 years old, was experienced in these little solitary adventures. He knew that after a while of exploring, he always came home. His instinct for freedom was a hallmark of his time on the streets before Noah rescued him 3 years ago. Since then, the two had formed an unbreakable bond, understanding each other's needs. Zeus would walk around the neighborhood, observing people and occasionally finding other dogs to play with. He would receive affection from strangers, explore familiar and unfamiliar corners, and after satisfying his curiosity, he would always find his way back home. During one of these explorations, he approached an alleyway he knew well, a place he visited often. It was then that something caught his attention, a faint but distinct sound. The cry was unmistakable, and Zeus recognized it immediately. It was not just any sound, but the wail of a baby. He knew from experience that the sound was that of a child, for recently Noah's mother, Grace, had given birth to Noah's little brother, Tim. Zeus, with his sharp instincts, paused for a moment, listening. He knew that the cry indicated that a child was in trouble, and it awakened a curiosity and urgency within him that he could not ignore. Guided by curiosity and a strong protective instinct, Zeus followed the sound cautiously, each step bringing him closer to the source of the crying that echoed through the alley. His ears were on high alert, focused on capturing any detail that could reveal what was happening. The alley was dark and somewhat intimidating, but that didn't make him hesitate. He was determined to discover the source of that distressing sound. As he advanced, Zeus's barking became more intense. Each sound he made a desperate attempt to warn of something urgent. When he finally reached the source of the crying, Zeus came across a dumpster from which the fragile sound of a baby emanated. The dog's heart was beating fast, filled with a mixture of fear and urgency. He needed to act, but he didn't know exactly how. On impulse, Zeus began to climb some boxes stacked next to the dumpster, struggling to reach the top. When he finally managed to look inside the dumpster, what he saw left him paralyzed. There, cruelly thrown among the trash, was a tiny baby, fragile and defenseless. The tiny body, completely naked, was shivering from the cold, exposed to the harsh night. The person who had abandoned the baby there had not even bothered to cover him, leaving him to his fate. Zeus, who had always shown himself to be an exceptionally intelligent dog, knew he needed to act quickly. With a sense of urgency, he began to look around for something, anything, that he could use to protect the baby from the biting cold. He sniffed intensely, moving frantically through the alley, determined to find something that would serve as a makeshift blanket. Even without human hands, his loyalty and protective instinct drove him to do everything in his power to save that vulnerable life. Zeus sniffed around tirelessly, determined to find something that could help the baby, while time seemed to be running out quickly. Finally, he found a torn piece of cloth, probably left by a homeless person who had passed by. He picked it up with his mouth and returned to the dumpster, moving carefully. Upon reaching it, the dog threw the improvised cloth onto the trash, using his nose to gently roll the baby until he was on top of the cloth. With surprising delicacy, Zeus continued to use his face and paws to adjust the blanket around the baby, covering him as best he could. However, he knew that simply covering the child would not be enough. The weak cry of the little being indicated that he needed something more, urgent help. Without hesitation, the dog grabbed the 4 corners of the cloth with his mouth and, remarkably, created a kind of improvised pouch, almost like a stork's bag. The baby remained huddled inside the blanket, protected by the improvised shelter. As carefully as possible, Zeus began to run towards his home, practically flying through the streets, making sure the child didn't fall. The sound of the baby's crying emanated from the blanket, drawing the attention of everyone who passed by. People looked on in amazement, trying to understand what they saw, a dog running with something in its mouth that made a peculiar sound. Could that be a baby? Some asked in disbelief, while others just watched, not believing the unusual scene they were witnessing. Zeus, however, did not allow himself to be distracted. His focus was completely on getting home, where he knew the baby would have a chance of survival. The road seemed longer than ever, but the dog's determination was unshakable, and the desire to save that little life drove him with every step. He advanced with great care, avoiding any bump that could hurt the baby even more, driven by a protective instinct that guided him with precision. Finally, Zeus reached the gate of the house and began to bark frantically. This was the usual signal to let Noah know that he had arrived, but this time, the barking was filled with urgency and desperation. The teenager, immersed in sad thoughts, was abruptly pulled out of his reflections by the desperate barking and ran to see what was happening. When he opened the gate, Noah was in disbelief at what he saw. There was Zeus, carefully holding the blanket that wrapped a baby, who was crying softly. The dog's gaze was a silent plea, as if begging for help. Noah stood paralyzed for a moment, unable to process the surreal scene that was unfolding before him. "My God, Zeus, what is this? Where did you find this baby?" he exclaimed, surprised and worried, until he finally came to his senses. Zeus just continued to bark, now inside the house, still with the same desperation. Noah, with her heart racing, picked up the baby, feeling how small and fragile it was. Without wasting any time, she entered the house shouting, "Mommy, Mommy, come and see." Grace was in the living room, her face marked with sadness and her eyes red from crying so much. Camillo, her stepfather, came running when he heard Noah's screams, fearing that something terrible had happened. But when they both saw Noah with a baby in her arms, shock overcame them. Grace immediately ran to pick up the child, holding him carefully in her arms. "Oh my God," she whispered, trying to calm the crying baby, placing him on her chest, close to her heart, in an attempt to give him some comfort. Gradually, the warmth of Grace's body seemed to have an effect, and the baby's crying began to subside. Camilla watched in disbelief, while Noah quickly explained that it was Zeus who brought the baby into the family. Emotion took over everyone, and for a moment, relief and disbelief gave way to tears. Everyone, including Noah, cried, deeply touched by what had happened. That night, which began with sadness, turned into a moment of unity and hope, with the unexpected miracle that the loyal dog had brought into their lives. Everyone rushed into the house and, upon examining the baby, noticed that he looked like he had just been born, no more than a few hours old. The little one's skin was cold and shivering, and his eyes were barely open. "He needs a warm bath," Grace said, with renewed determination in her voice. Everyone immediately mobilized. The men heated the water while Grace prepared the little bath. The energy in the house completely changed, going from an atmosphere of sadness to one of unity. Everyone focused on caring for the baby. Grace looked at the newborn with a tenderness she hadn't felt in a long time, and for the first time in days, she smiled. "He's ours, a godsend," she whispered, feeling a deep and immediate connection with the tiny life before her. Noah watched her mother in awe, knowing that this was a special moment, a gift in the midst of so much suffering. Zeus, the loyal dog, stood by the family's side, watching intently, as if he understood the importance of what he had done. He seemed more than pleased to see that the baby was receiving the necessary care, knowing that he had accomplished his mission. Camillo returned with the bathtub and the heated water, and Grace, with all the care in the world, placed the baby in the warm water. The little one calmed down instantly, feeling the comforting warmth around him. As she washed the baby with extreme delicacy, Grace whispered words of love and comfort, as if each touch were a promise of protection. "We will take care of him. He is a miracle in our lives," she said, her eyes meeting those of Camillo and Noah. Camillo, still trying to process everything that had happened, nodded with a look that reflected deep gratitude. The unexpected arrival of the baby brought a light of hope and renewal to that family, which had been marked by overwhelming sadness. But what had happened to make everyone so sad before the arrival of this little miracle? The desolation that hung over that house was the result of a devastating tragedy. Grace, Noah's mother, had faced an extremely difficult pregnancy with her new husband, Camillo. She was Noah's father's widow, and after remarrying, the couple had longed with all their hearts to have a baby. However, fate had other plans. From the beginning, the pregnancy was marked by difficulties and pain. After a few months, doctors diagnosed the baby with a rare condition called Edwards syndrome, or trisomy 18. They explained that the chances of the baby being born alive were less than 10%. The couple were advised to terminate the pregnancy, as the baby's life expectancy, if born, would be extremely short and full of complications. The devastating news cast a shadow over the home, plunging everyone into anticipated mourning. Each day that passed was a battle against fear and sadness. Grace and Camillo, despite all the pain, decided to continue with the pregnancy, holding on to the little hope that remained. Noah, although young, understood the gravity of the situation and also suffered with her mother's uncertainty and suffering. Now, with the baby Zeus had found in their arms, the once desolate family felt that they had somehow been given a second chance, a sign that perhaps, even in the darkest moments, life could still bring miracles. Despite all the adversity, Grace and Camillo decided to go ahead with the pregnancy. Although the doctors had given a grim prognosis, Grace was not at risk, and they wanted to give their son the chance to fight for his life, no matter how small that hope was. "We believe he will make it," Grace said with tears in her eyes, her voice filled with emotion and unwavering determination. Camillo, sharing this same hope, supported his wife, even though he was aware of the risks and pain they might face. Unfortunately, as the doctors had predicted, the baby was born and lived for only 10 days. That brief life, so long awaited and loved, brought a fleeting joy that soon turned into immeasurable pain. The house was ready to welcome the new member of the family. The little room had been decorated with great care, the clothes chosen with care, and the toys were waiting to be used. However, the little one only used his things for a few days. The rush to the hospital during the baby's final crisis, followed by the return home without him, was a devastating experience for the entire family. The grief was immense and pervasive, as if a thick shadow had fallen over the home. Grace, already weakened by the difficult pregnancy, succumbed to a profound sadness. She had not been able to stop crying for weeks. The pain of loss was unbearable, a void that seemed impossible to fill. Camillo tried to be strong for his wife, but he too was devastated. The void left by the absence of his son was like an open wound, impossible to heal. Noah, seeing her mother and stepfather so dejected, also suffered deeply. He tried hard to be resilient, but the pain of losing such a longed-for little brother was overwhelming, a weight that seemed to crush his young heart. It was this pain that led him to go for a walk with Zeus that day. "I need to get out of here. I can't stand seeing my mother like this," thought Noah, feeling helpless in the face of the suffering that was ravaging her family. As Noah walked through the square with Zeus, the atmosphere at home was suffocating with sadness. He and his faithful dog needed a moment of relief, a break from the grief that enveloped their lives. The walk was an attempt to escape, even if only for a brief moment, the crushing weight of pain. As he walked, Noah couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Memories of his mother crying next to his little brother in the hospital, the agonizing days of waiting for a miracle that never happened, and the overwhelming feeling of helplessness that dominated everyone, came flooding back. Zeus, always by his side, seemed to sense his owner's suffering, moving even closer, as if to offer some comfort. Although the tragedy that struck the family had left deep scars, the unexpected arrival of the baby, found by Zeus, brought with it new hope. Noah was still processing everything, but she knew that this moment represented a new chance for everyone. Grace, who had been consumed by grief for so long, was finally smiling again. She laughed as she watched the baby splash his hands in the water during his bath, her motherly gaze shining with genuine happiness. Camillo, even though he knew that the baby was not biologically his, watched him with affection, as if he already considered him his own son. "He's beautiful, isn't he?" Grace commented, gently stroking the little one's head. Both she and Camillo had a sparkle of renewed joy in their eyes. They wasted no time in taking the baby to the doctor to perform all the necessary tests, and, to everyone's relief, it was confirmed that he was healthy. This news was like a breath of life, a victory for the family. Feeling that destiny had given them a second chance, they decided that they would raise the baby as their own son. "We'll call him Lucas. He's our miracle from God. Now we're going to be a family again," Grace said, with an emotional smile. Camillo held his wife's hand and agreed, "Yes, he's our miracle." A deep happiness, something he hadn't felt for a long time, flooded Camillo's heart. Even Zeus seemed to understand the importance of that fragile life, demonstrating from the first moment an unconditional love for the baby he had found. Zeus, ever watchful and protective, stood beside the crib, watching the baby with a care that went beyond that of a simple pet dog. He became an essential member of that new family, a constant presence that radiated security and love. As the months passed, the little boy grew strong and healthy, spreading happiness wherever he went. His smile was like a ray of sunshine, dispelling the dark clouds that had previously hung over the family. Noah, who had suffered immensely with the loss of his brother, now felt a new hope blossom in his heart. He loved taking care of Lucas, spending hours playing with him, and developed a deep and special bond with his adopted brother. The house, which had previously been marked by sadness and pain, now echoed with laughter and happy moments. The couple, Grace and Camillo, were closer than ever, finding strength in each other and in the new life they now had under their care. "Look, Mommy, he's trying to walk," Noah exclaimed, full of joy, upon seeing Lucas's first hesitant steps. Each new challenge they faced only strengthened the family bond, transforming each day into a celebration of the second chance they had been given. "Come on, Lucas, say Daddy," Camillo encouraged, holding his son in his arms and looking at him with the tenderness of someone who had always dreamed of being a father. Now, he had the opportunity to raise and love this little miracle that had come into their lives. And Zeus, the faithful guardian, continued to watch carefully, always by Lucas' side, as if he knew the importance of protecting that precious life. With every step little Lucas took, Zeus was always close by, watching intently and protecting him with a dedication that seemed almost supernatural. The bond between them was something special, as if the dog instinctively knew that he had played a key role in bringing this baby into the family. Over time, the family built new memories, all filled with love and joy. Grace, who had known the deepest sadness, now felt immense gratitude for every moment she had spent with Lucas. She had rediscovered the joy of being a mother, and the future finally looked bright for everyone. Grace, Camillo, Noah, and Lucas faced the days ahead with hope and determination. Despite all the difficulties and twists and turns they had faced, life had given them an invaluable gift, the chance to be happy again as a family. And so, with hearts filled with renewed hope, they prepared to write the next chapters of their story. If you are moved by this story, I am sure that the next video that will appear on your screen will also touch your heart. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our next videos. A big hug, and see you in the next exciting story.